A reporter asked Donald Trump, "Can we wrap this war up this week?" Trump said, "Yeah, sure." Then the reporter asked, "Will we?" Trump said, "I don't think so." "Yeah, sure. I don't think so." That is the President of the United States describing his exit strategy for a war in which 8 Americans are dead and the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And that was not even the most alarming thing he said.
Thank you. You were talking about Iran a couple times today and what they did after Epic Fury began. You said they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time that that might be their retaliation?
Nobody, no. The greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit. They were, I wouldn't say friendly countries. They were like neutral. They lived with them for years. Peter, they were going to take over the Middle East. They were going to knock out Israel with their nuclear weapon. But after we knocked out their nuclear potential weapon, they started building missiles, thousands and thousands of missiles. And they were going to do it with missiles while they developed. These are sick people. While they developed nuclear, somehow they were going to start at a different site because that site was, you saw the site, the mountain. They were going to go into a certain area, which we know exactly where it is, and they were going to do that. And it's incredible what we've done. I tell you, the job we've done. Do you know, if I didn't terminate Barack Hussein Obama's Iran nuclear deal, you would right now, well, Israel would be gone. It would be incinerated, and probably the Middle East likewise. And remember, they got all of those missiles. And I heard they were sending missiles to UAE. I said, that's strange. You know, UAE is like the banker for Iran. They're like the banker. Qatar, their neighbors, they got along okay. Saudi Arabia. All of a sudden, Kuwait is getting hit. Bahrain is getting, all these countries are getting hit. There was no expert that would say that was going to happen. It's not a question of like, gee, should you have known? And if we did know, big deal. I mean, we have to do what we have to do. But we hit them so hard like nobody's ever been hit. We hit them very hard. And we've extinguished most of their missiles. We've extinguished most of their drones. We've extinguished most of the places where the missiles and the drones are built. We've fully extinguished 2 layers of leadership and probably a third, if you believe some stories. So we only have one thing, to have a little choke point, and they've used it very well for years, but it doesn't work. But I think this, if some of these countries that we've been good to for years, and maybe more important than that, some of these countries that get 90% and 95% of their energy from Hormuz, the Strait. Hormuz, a famous, wonderful, beautiful place, but you wouldn't want to be necessarily sailing a boat there right now.
I would not.
Okay, you know why? Not because of them, because of us. Because we've taken out their entire Navy. We've taken out every one of their drone, they call it a drone layer, a mine layer. There's specific boats that are meant to put mines on. How would you like to have a nation that has 22 boats where their sole function, they're very different looking boats. You wouldn't want one for your family. They're not pretty. Their sole function is to lift a mine into the water and drop it a certain number of feet down. But they had 22 of them. We've taken out all of them. But you can probably drop them off on the boats. So we don't even know. By the way, we don't know that any mines have even been dropped. But the thought that they would scares people that have billion-dollar ships. Yeah. Please.
Thank you, President Trump. I'd like to ask the Vice President about his plans to go after possible fraud in California and New York. We know, of course, about Minnesota. And President Trump, first could ask you, you said earlier today that the new Supreme Leader, Wataba Khomeini, you don't know if he's dead or alive. There are a couple of interesting reports about him today. There's one report that he just narrowly escaped death in the first airstrikes by stepping out into his garden. There's another report that he may actually be gay despite leading a theocracy that hangs gay people. How do you determine what's true, and do you have an assessment of this?
Well, so far nobody knows. If you look at his father, he used to give talks a lot, you know, talking about death to America. He'd say death to America all the time. When they say death to America, you should believe them, because that's what they would have. If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it. But they never had the chance. I never gave them the chance to use it. And other presidents should have done. I spoke to one of the former presidents who I actually like. I actually speak to some. I do like some people. It'd be shocking. And he said, I wish I did what you did. Could have done it. Other presidents, somebody should have done it. 47 years this went on.
Nobody expected it. That is what the President of the United States said. No expert, nobody. They were shocked. Iran hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the way, Bahrain, Kuwait, countries that were effectively neutral, countries that were Iran's economic partners, countries that had nothing to do with the U.S.-Israeli operation. And Trump said, nobody expected that. Let me tell you what former national security officials said this week about that claim. A former deputy national security advisor said all of this was predictable. He sat in contingency meetings about a war with Iran over a decade ago. Everything Iran is doing right now was anticipated in those meetings. A former CIA director said, if you launch an existential war against Iran, do not be surprised when Iran responds existentially. The New York Times interviewed 12 U.S. officials. Their conclusion, the White House did not plan for the Strait of Hormuz closure, did not think it would happen. And Trump said nobody expected Iran to hit its neighbors. There is a very simple explanation for why nobody in the Trump administration expected this. They did not read the contingency documents. The plans existed. The scenarios existed. The experts who ran those scenarios existed. Career intelligence officials, military planners, foreign policy professionals who spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. Trump did not consult them, did not read their work, went in thinking he could drop bombs for 2 weeks and walk away. And when Iran did exactly what every expert said it would do, hit regional targets to impose maximum economic and political cost, Trump stood at a podium and said nobody expected it. Nobody. Except everybody who actually studied Iran. Now, here is what makes that admission even more damning. Trump did not just say nobody expected it. He also said, even if we did know, big deal. We have to do what we have to do. Even if we knew. He is admitting that the intelligence and planning failures do not matter, that regardless of what his experts told him or failed to tell him, the decision was already made. That is not confidence. That is a man telling you he was not interested in what his intelligence community had to say before he started a war. And now Qatar is getting hit. Saudi Arabia is getting hit. The UAE is getting hit. Countries that supply the world's energy. Countries that route trillions of dollars of global commerce through their ports and airports. And 8 Americans are dead. And the Strait of Hormuz is closed. And oil is approaching $100 a barrel. But nobody expected it.
They call Iran the bully of the Middle East. And you could have never had the Abraham Accords. You could never have had peace in the Middle East. Now you're going to have peace. You could never do it with the dark cloud of a nuclear Iran. But Iran is a shell of itself. It's no longer a bully. It's the one that gets bullied. It's a bully that got beat up. We beat the crap out of them. And they deserve that. You know, when you see a soldier walking down the street without his arms or being helped down the street because he's got no legs, or his face is blown to smithereens with no legs and no arms, those two, no legs, no arms, and a face that got racked. That was done by roadside bombs. That's the favorite weapon of Soleimani, who I killed in my first administration. General Soleimani, had I not killed him, that was the beginning of their downfall, because had he not gone, it's possible that we would not be this far advanced in destroying Iran, because he was a really good general. He was a vicious, horrible man, but he was a brilliant general. And he was looking to knock out 5 of our military bases at one time. And the man that died with him was his counterpart in Iraq. And they were working together. And they got hit real hard. And if that didn't happen, we would have had a problem. But maybe more importantly than that, he was really the mastermind behind it. And they never found somebody to replace him in terms of the genius. I knocked him out. And that was a big step, knocking him out. But if we didn't get rid of the Obama deal, I terminated it against the wishes of my then Secretary of State. He was no Marco. Against the wishes of a lot of people at the time. You remember that, Peter? A lot of people. Had I not terminated, remember that, Stephen? You remember? They were all, no, dude, this is not, that deal was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have had it 3 years ago. And it would have been used, I would say, 2 to 3 years ago, and it would have been used in the Middle East. And by the way, after they were finished that, they were coming over here. They never got a chance to do it.
I just want to ask you about something very interesting that you said twice today. That you talked to another former president about the Iran strikes.
I did.
Was it George W. Bush?
No.
Was it Bill Clinton?
I don't want to say. I don't want to say. Because
Barack Obama.
a member of a party, they have Trump derangement syndrome, but it's somebody that happens to like me, and I like that person who's a smart person. But that person said, I wish I did it. Okay? But I don't want to get into who.
Okay.
I don't want to get him into trouble. Maybe, hey,
I have a guess.
you know what? Yeah, I think you probably know. You know, it's interesting. And maybe he'd be proud. And I could even ask him that. Would you like me to reveal your name to Peter at Fox? Well, at least you have high ratings. Your ratings are through the roof, Peter.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you for noticing.
Congratulations.
Can I ask you another question about the war? If Iran, as you said, totally obliterated, got the missiles, got the first 2 rounds of leadership, Air Force gone, Navy gone, can we wrap this war up this week?
Yeah, sure. Good.
Will we?
I don't think so, but it'll be soon. Won't be long. And we're going to have a much safer world when it's wrapped up. It'll be wrapped up soon. We're going to have a much safer world. I had an obligation to do this. I didn't want to, I call it an excursion. I didn't want to make this journey. We had the highest stock market in history. We had low gas prices. Everything was good. And I know exactly. I know what, you're going to do it. And people are going to raise the price of oil. And that's good. But I know that. But that's a very small thing compared to allowing them to have. You want to see a stock market go down?
An excursion. Donald Trump called a war in which 8 Americans are dead, in which the Strait of Hormuz is closed, in which oil is approaching $100 a barrel, in which the entire Middle East is destabilizing. An excursion. An excursion. And high gas prices? A very small price to pay. He said he thought prices were going to go down much more. He said he was actually pleasantly surprised they did not drop as much as he expected. Let me translate that. Trump expected this war to crash the economy worse than it has. He went in knowing it would hurt Americans at the gas pump. He went in expecting it to be even worse than it is. And he considers that acceptable. A small price. Worth it. The Americans filling up their tanks this week, paying more than they were 2 weeks ago, are a small price. The workers whose costs are rising because fertilizer and chemicals and industrial goods are stuck on ships that cannot move through the strait. Small price. The retirement accounts taking hits because markets are reacting to an expanding war with no exit strategy. Small price. And now let me tell you about the B-2 bomber. At this same press conference, Trump asked an aide to hand him a model of a B-2 stealth bomber. He held it. He examined it. He said, "Give me that bomber. Let me just hug that little sucker." He hugged a toy bomber while describing a war in which 8 Americans are dead. And then he described in detail watching the B-2 strike Iran from the Situation Room. 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, diving, the biggest explosions anybody has ever heard outside of nuclear. He described it like a movie, like entertainment, like the most exciting thing he has ever seen. Not once in that entire description did he mention the people on the ground, the civilians, the 160 schoolgirls.
The 1,300 Iranian civilians dead, the families, just the plane, the dive, the explosions, the technology. What a great country, what I built. He said, I built it.
I built it during my first term. Not the engineers, not the military personnel, not the decades of investment and development. I built it. And then, the most revealing moment of the entire press conference. Can we wrap this war up this week? Yeah, sure. Will we? I don't think so. That is the exit strategy. Yeah, sure. I don't think so. It'll be soon. An excursion. A small price. 8 Americans dead. Nobody expected it. High gas prices are fine. I hugged the bomber. It'll be wrapped up soon. This is the commander-in-chief of the United States military. This is the man who decided alone, without Congress, without the American people, to start this war. And when asked how it ends, yeah, sure. I don't think so. Share this video. Because the people paying for this excursion deserve a real answer, not a shrug and a toy bomber. Subscribe. New video every week. Drop a comment. Does yeah, sure, I don't think so sound like a man who has a plan to you? Because it does not sound like one to me.